there, YouTube. Welcome on back to Artichokedip. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer. And in this video, we're going to get into a couple of things. But first, I pose this question. What does Dark Lord and 3 character classes have to do in common? We'll find out about that here in a second. But if you liked the video, please click the like button. It lets me know if you like the content. And if you're new here, and you just stumbled across my page, don't forget to click that subscribe button followed by the bell icon. Every time I upload a new video, you'll get a notification so you don't miss one. So, one thing I've noticed lately about YouTube, and I'm sure you have too yourself, is there's no shortage of... They're like these extended play infomercials, if you will. But they're for games, they're for tabletop games, and they have big fancy editing and a large budget to be able to operate within, and they have all these people and paid sponsors to come on there and talk about these games and how great these games are, and it's the best game that's ever been invented, ever, and you need to buy it. You have to buy it. Just until the next game comes along and, well, they do it all over again. And it's so disingenuous. It really is. I mean, I don't like doing a review like that. Well, for one, I don't get paid to do review. All my gaming stuff is my hard-earned money. This is all what I like to spend my hobby and my time doing. So I'm not endorsed or paid by anybody to do this. Second of all, I like to give a review from a gamer's perspective, not from a marketer's perspective. So let's jump into this and talk about these couple of games that I've been playing around with. I've recently acquired them, and I've taken a couple of weeks off from video making to kind of, well, indulge in them and play them, experiencing them, digest it a little bit so I could make a really informed review for you guys out there. And let's get into it. The first one I want to talk about is this one right here, Fantasy Age. When this first came out, and years back, I remember this cover with the huge ogre on the cover wearing the horn helm and all the armor. It looked very interesting, but it was expensive. When it first came out, I think it was up like close to $60 if I remember correctly, just for the main core rulebook. And I was like, I'll wait. And I'll let you in on a little secret. This is the way I do it. A lot of people may share the same thought on gaming as I do, or maybe not. When a game first come out, I never buy it. And the reason why I don't buy it is it's usually ridiculously expensive, and really, for me, spending that extra money to be able to get the game, to be able to have the bragging rights to say, ooh, I got it, it doesn't make any sense. If you wait till the price comes down a little bit, you're still getting the same game, right? At a lesser price. Yeah. So, that's what I like to do. So I would check on it sporadically and see where the price was at, and then I had noticed that Amazon had moved this down to $22 for a hardcover book, and it's a complete RPG system in this book, which to me was a really damn good deal compared to if you price that out with a lot of other RPGs today. Let me just take an example of the elephant in the room, like 5th edition D&D, where you're looking at what, $50 for the main core rule book, and that's just one. And you're also going to need the monster manual, and you're probably going to want the DM's guide, and that's, so now you're up to $150. And then you got your setting books, and then everything else that goes into it. Where for me, I like to look for game systems that are kind of self-contained, one book, and this one fits the bill. It really does. I'm going to get into this. I'm going to talk about it and my impressions of it. So, unlike a D20 system, this is all a D6 system. In their system, they call Adventure Game Engine. I can never remember that. Adventure Game Engine. I'll have to commit that to memory. But that's where, if you look at the name, Fantasy Age. Now, there's another game out there that uses the exact same rule set, exact same everything, Dragon Age. And if you're familiar with that franchise name, it started out as a video game, and I was introduced to it when I first got my PS3 way back when, and it was the very first game I had ever downloaded to my console, as a matter of fact. And I enjoyed it. I loved the video game. So, but I noticed the price is still a little inflated on that, but it makes sense because you're paying for that franchise name. In doing the research and reading about it, there essentially it's the same game. It's just this is a basic overall fantasy realm game, and it can be adapted to any world you're using, anything you want to do, whereas the Dragon Age is adapted well to that particular setting. So I was like, well, wait a minute, why don't I just get this? Because, well, I've already played Dragon Age. I mean, I can sit down and pencil in everything and put the encounters that I want to put into it to make it work. If I wanted to do that, I probably wouldn't, because if I want to play Dragon Age, I'll just, well, go to the PS3 and fire it up and play Dragon Age on the PS3. But with that aside, this is a cool system. It really is. It's a basic system. Unlike a lot of RPGs we see today, where you have all this extra clutter added to your character creation, your feats, your skills, and then this, and then your domains, and then that, and then this, and then that, and then this, and this doesn't have that. It really doesn't. It's a very, very simplistic RPG system, but it's a big RPG system. I'll explain that to you here in a minute. Matter of fact, if you take a look at the character sheet, you can just see how basic this character sheet really is, and that's your character sheet. As a matter of fact, unlike a lot of RPG systems out there where it may take you 2-3 hours to create a character, this is pretty straightforward. And after you make your first character, you'll breeze through the second one, and within less than an hour's time, you'll have a character and everything you need. The cool thing I like about this game system, and I've been finding this trend lately, and so there's so many games that are just umbrellaed underneath the D20 system. And this is not the D20 system. Like Forbidden Lands, this is kind of feels like Forbidden Lands. Forbidden Lands is more in-depth and complex than this particular game system is. But there are huge differences, and I'm going to talk about those. But the cool thing I like about it is it's a very skill-heavy driven system, where instead of having your attributes and your skills, your attributes and your skills are kind of one and the same. There's really not a clear, defined line between the two. They're all the same. And when you roll up your character, at that point, you'd roll your 3d6 and you look at your number, and it's got a conversion table you go off of, and it'll tell you, I think if it's a 12 through a 14, you get like a 1. And let me get to the ability section here. And that's going to bring me into a little later into the video, another supplement that they sell for this. Okay, so determining your abilities. So when you get to a 9, at that point you acquire 1 point. So if you rolled a 9 on 3d6, you get 1 point. And then once you get into the ability roll of about 12 points, you acquire 2 points. And then it jumps up to 3 around 15. And it stays at 3 until you get to 18, and if you get 18, you get 4. And that's the max amount. And I'm going to explain really why that is. So out of these abilities, you have accuracy and communication for speaking, constitution, which reflects your health and your overall well-being, dexterity, how dexterous your character is, fighting, how well your character is in combat, intelligence, well, just intelligence, how, you know, how well intelligent is your character. Perception, how does your character perceive? How is he, you know, is he pretty sharp? Does he perceive stuff that many others may not? Or is he, well, you know, as they say, as sharp as a marble? It's just dim-witted. Strength, you know, your strong strength of your character. And willpower, the ability to be able to, well, have that willpower to resist magic or the mental abuses of the others' encounters in the world. And it's what it all breaks down to. And after you roll up these attributes, those numbers are allotted to those. And depending on the race you decide to choose, whether you're a dwarf or a gnome or you're an elf or whatever fantasy race that you choose, you're going to get a bonus and or penalty to these like you would any RPG system. But then there's your class, but there's only 3 classes available to you in this system. More about that later. So with that in mind, you roll these 3d6, you convert it to that table, and your number is going to change depending on the class and the race you choose. Once that's done, well, everything from there on out is calculated off of that. Your speed, your defense, and a little bit more to it. You got your background, your social class, and background and social class will determine how much gear your adventure is going to start with. And really, I'm not going to dive off into that too much. It's just part of the character creation end of it. It really does not have... It does not weigh as heavy as you might think on the RPG side of it. But it, in fact, does influence it, we'll say. So, with that in mind, getting that out of the way, hope you're still with me and you're still with me up to this point. I know I can ramble at times. When you play the game system, it's very simplistic. Whether you're exploring, whether you're having a conversation with an NPC in the village, whether you're doing a dungeon delve, whether you're in a huge combat situation, does not matter. It all operates the same. You roll 3d6, you add that number, and then you look at the skill that you're rolling the 3d6 for. For example, melee combat. You're into melee combat against an encounter. You're squaring off. You have your two-handed battle axe. You're going to roll 3d6. You're going to add those numbers up. Let's say you rolled 10 and you have a fighting skill of 4. Well, you have 14 now. So you would look at the encounter's defense number, and his defense number is a 13. You hit. Now, this is what I really like and where it gets cool. So now you have hit your encounter. You figure your damage. So you're using your battle axe. So you're going to roll 2d6, add those numbers together, then you're going to add your strength number into that. So let's say your strength number was a 3 and you rolled a 5. So now you're up to 8 points of damage. You would then look at the encounter's armor number, because this is what's unique about this game system. It takes into account when everybody starts out, they have minimal experience at armor. So you don't start out with full plate armor and stuff like that. You have to work your way up to that. Everybody has pretty much light leather armor until they get more experience and higher up in levels. So your armor is relatively low, which means there's a potential for you to take a lot of damage. Well, just a lot of damage until you get more proficient with armor, which I like that about an RPG system. But anyways, getting back to my example, you have 8 and the opponent has an armor of 3. Well, you subtract 3 from it with 5, and at that point, that encounter would lose 5 points of damage. It's that simple. The magic system, the thing I like about it, because there's two different systems here. You're going to have the melee side and you're going to have the magic side of it, like any good fantasy RPG system. And the thing I do like about the magic system with this system, it's very reminiscent of the days of old of RPG. And unlike what we see in the most current edition of D&D, where whether you're a cleric or you're a sorcerer or a magic user or whatever sage, whatever you decide to be, it seems like there's no end to cantrips. And it's like all these wizard classes are drinking this special energy tonic that gives them just these exuberant amount of extra mental fortitude, if you will, to be able to just constantly keep casting cantrips, one after another, one after another, one after another, one after another, without end. Now, the thing about magic, and what I like about the older RPG systems, where this game really, in my opinion, really captures it really well, is the fact that magic is supposed to be mysterious and dangerous and rare. And a handful of few have decided to risk their lives to be able to pursue this art, to learn its dangerous secrets, and through a lot of work and concentration, preparation, and time, they're able to cast the spell. But once it's cast, it is devastating indeed. It's a very, very, in my opinion, rich RPG environment to play in like that, rather than to where magic is just kind of like, well, pulling sheets of paper off a Xerox machine one after another, and there's no end to them, and it just, So, I enjoy that. The cool thing about the magic system in this that I really like is when you get to the magic section, even at first level, all spells are available to your magic user. And you may be thinking for a moment, going, well, wait a minute. This is where it gets interesting. So, unlike a lot of other game systems to where your character starts out and at their level they have this set of spells that are available to them, and until they level up, then at that point they can unlock higher level of spells. I'm going to take a sip of coffee here. There we go. Higher level of spells that obviously do more damage. This system does the same thing, but where it does it differently, as I was saying, if you make a magic user, and when you start out, all the spells are available to you. The difference is, when you are low level, you only have access to the novice area of the spell. As your character builds up experience and over time, then at that point, the journeyman part of that spell unlocks, which becomes more powerful. So they learn a more devastating secret about that spell, if you will. And then ultimately, after they gain even more experience, they become a master in it. And then they unlock that spell's full potential and are able to do very devastating attacks. But the cool thing about it is it's not limiting. You have everything available to you, but there's the incentive to want to level your character to be able to unlock these spells even more to get to their devastating abilities as to which they can do. Now, that's the spell list and how the spells work with the characters. The cool thing that I like about it is when you create your character, from character creation, you have a designated set of magic points. When you look at your spells, each spell costs a particular point of magic points. When you go to cast the spell, you have a target number. You roll your 3d6. It would be at that point, you would add your intelligence skill number to it. And if you had Arcana Focus too, which would be a bonus, you would also add that to it. And then you would look at the final number and look at the spell. If it meets or exceeds that number, at that point your spell successfully goes off. Now, the cool thing is, encounters and other characters, they do have the ability to be able to resist a spell or save from the spell, and it's very simple mathematical equation. You take the spell power, which is 10, plus the willpower of the caster, add that together, and that is your target number to be able to save, to be able to roll, to be able to save from that spell. And if you don't, well, you suffer. It's a tax. It's very interesting because even though you have all these spells available to you, and even at first level as a magic user, you're going to only have 4 spell slots available to you. So all the spells are open, but you can only pick 4, and of those 4, it's going to cost you this many points. Now, after your character rests, of course, they regain those magic points, but getting back to, you are limited with the magic. So it makes it more valuable in this world. And instead of magic feeling as if it's just Xerox paper coming off of the copier, now it actually has value. It actually has power behind it for the fact that it is rare. And I love that. I love that style of RPG. Now, character classes. And let's talk about the character classes because, well, this is where some people may feel as if it's restricted compared to other game systems. Let's use D&D as an example. D&D, you have a huge amount of classes and races to choose from to be able to really create your own unique character. Whereas in this system, you only have 3 classes available, and that's Mage, Rogue, and Warrior. Now, that's not to say that in future publications they may come out with more expansions to give you more character class options, because they might. I don't know that yet. But with what you have, and the fact that you have the different standard fantasy races to go along with that, your dwarf, your elf, gnome, halfling, human, and an orc, you're given quite a bit of customization. If they were to put more classes into this book would probably be about the size of the Pathfinder player's manual, which is almost about as thick as a dictionary. So the fact that you get what you do, in my opinion, honestly, I'm pretty happy with it. To be honest with you, it's a cool little game system. Everything you need to play this game is all in here. From character creation, going into the basic rules, your character options, your equipment, and then what I'm going to get into here a little bit are stunts and explain that. And then it goes into the back of the book, which is for what they call the Game Master. And, well, if you played any type of RPG system, you understand that, what that's about. And it gives examples for a new budding Game Master to be able to read and understand how a game is supposed to be played, how game flow works, keeping certain dice rolls secrets from the players, and so on and so forth. Just your basic overall, how do I put it, pep talk for the new DM. You're the new DM. You create the world. You keep the characters entertained, and here's all this hideousness that you get and evil to be able to throw at them. Game on. So, Um, you know, it goes into that. Now, stunts is a very unique thing to this particular system, which comes into the AGE, which is acronym for Adventure Game Engine, which hence fantasy. This is just a basic overall fantasy system in the AGE mechanic system, and then you got the Dragon Age system, which is essentially, from all the reviews that I've read and everything that I've looked at, is well the same game. Just one year, like I said in the beginning of the video, you're paying for the franchise cost of it, and this one, well, you're just getting the basic overall system, which is good enough for my table. I'm happy with it. But when it comes to stunts, so when you roll your 3d6, anytime you come up with doubles, doesn't matter if it's a 1, 2, any double. If you're doing exploration, if you're doing combat, if you're doing magic, if you're any aspect of the gaming whatsoever, you roll it, that requires a dice roll, and you roll a double. There's a chart that you correspond to that'll give you a specific stunt that can be used immediately. Some of them, the vast majority of them, offer bonuses to that, whether it's enhancing the spell, or it's enhancing combat, or giving you more damage, or giving you the upper hand on a particular role-playing task, maybe where you're trying to get some information out of an NPC, and it gives you the upper, just that upper little edge that you need to be able to bluff that NPC, to get him to trust you and give you more information than what you really needed, for an example. And you have that here. Now, I have to admit, it's a cool thing. It really is. When I first started playing this, I rolled up one character. I rolled up the warrior class and wrote up his backstory and played that. And the little village it started out in was, well, the inhabitants weren't that nice, and despite his best efforts, well, some of them, the way that the dice fell, they were just downright rude, all the way down to the innkeeper that refused to even give him a room for the night in this downpouring rain. Didn't matter how much silver he was offering him, he just didn't like the sight of him and didn't particularly care for my character, and told him, no, you're not going to stay here. Get the hell out. Yeah. All the way down to my newest character I just added in, which is a magic user. And I like it. I like this system. Now, of course, this does incorporate to some encounters, basic encounters. It gives you, or keep you busy for a few game sessions, but you would tire of them fairly quickly. I will just tell you that much, because you are kind of limited to how many encounters you get. They give you just enough encounters to get started, and like I said, play some low-level basic adventures, and they give you some pretty decent powered encounters as well. And with that, it could pose some unique dangers to very low level characters at first, but if they, depending on how quick they level, they won't find too much of a challenge for very long. Which brings me into the other part of Fantasy Age I wanted to talk about, and which is really cool. So I had picked this up, and as you notice, I have all these little tabs marked off in the book, and these were all for different tables that you need to play the game. So I did a little bit of research, and I had found that they did release a Game Master screen for this, and I picked it up. Now, if you've been on the edge with this game system and you're thinking about picking this up, I strongly urge you get Game Master screen, and I'm going to show you why here in a minute. Obviously, the Game Master screen, you're going to get what you would expect out of any RPG system. You're going to get, your Game Master screen. It's going to have all your cool information you need to know on here, but really, you're not going to use this as much as you are these right here. These are two-sided cards with all the tables in the book that are going to go through everything you need to know. Even if you're playing this solo, it's going to be a very quick reference chart for you to go to, and it's going to save you a whole lot of time and speed game time up, which is really cool. When it gets into your skill test, it'll go through every skill and it'll explain every aspect of that would require a dice roll and underneath what skill you should use. So, as a example, arcane lore. Well, knowing about magic and its traditions. So in order to know about arcane lore, that's going to be an intelligence focus. So you'd roll 3d6 and you would add your intelligence number to that roll to see if you actually succeeded at that task. The other cool thing, I didn't get into this a whole lot, and it was the rule systems and how they break things up in combat into major actions and then minor actions. So a minor action would be to activate an item, to aim a weapon, to get your guard up, to move from the position you're at, or prepare a weapon. Press an attack, ready, or stand firm against an upcoming attack. Those would all be minor actions, which would mean it's something you could do and still take your turn. A major action would mean this is something that's going to take your entire turn to accomplish. So you're not going to have time for anything else. And that would be an all-out attack, a charge, defending, to heal one of your companions, a melee attack, a ranged attack, or to run from the encounter if you were outnumbered all to begin with. The other cool little thing it comes with are all your stunts. So, if I can, hopefully I got the rear, you can see right there on the very far left, all the way over here, where it has that numerical system on it, and those are your doubles rolled, and then you just cross-reference it. And what's really cool about this is it gives you your exploration stunts, your role-playing stunts, your combat stunts, and your spell stunts. Everything right there. I love that. These are invaluable, and they speed the game up so much. Another thing that this system does employ is black powder type of weapons and grenades. I haven't really played around with those too much. My characters are very low level. I've only played a couple of game sessions with them. So I'm just getting the overall feel of the game, the flow of it, how the magic works, and I'm telling you, these cards have sped everything up. My first game session was kind of slow for the fact that I was constantly flipping back and forth from this table to that table to this table. Once I got these suckers, it sped right up. As a matter of fact, I don't even use that core rule book because the rule system is so simple. Really, all you need are these right here after you understand it, and you can set them right next to your character sheets, and everything is at your fingertips. And now you just have to worry about your dice rolls and moving your minis on the board if you're using those, and, well, go about playing the game systems. The other cool thing is that in the Game Master screen, it gives you the formula for all your ability tests, making attacks, hazards you may run into, and damages that would be allotted to those, advanced tests. So if it was an easy or an advanced test, example, if you're trying to pick a lock and it's a relatively simple lock, or it's an elaborate mechanical monstrosity that you're trying to unlock there, and the difficulty class as to what you would be looking at for the target number to be able to achieve that, all the way down to your spell casting. And it even gives you more options here, such as your treasure categories, and even goes into your armor ratings, which becomes invaluable with your encounters and the weapons, because then at that point you can go back to that chart relatively quickly and be able to access the weapon and look for the damage, whether it be for your character or something you missed on character creation, or when it comes to the encounter itself. Anyways, the other book that I did pick up besides the Game Master for this, and the reason why at first I was just going to convert creatures that I had out of the monster manual over to this system, and then when I really started to look at it and everything that they put into it as far as the stunts and the special abilities that these encounters have, it was a pretty daunting task, and I'd probably have a stack of notebook papers like that thick by the time I got done with it. So I decided to pick this up to go with it. And this is the Fantasy Age Bestiary. And this gives you so many unique encounters to fill your world that this will keep you busy for a long time. The cool thing I like about it is, unlike a lot of old school fantasy RPGs, if you will, where you look at the encounter section and it's pretty much just a reprint of this particular game, so you can take, you know, these next 10 or 20 games that are over here and they're pretty much all the same and encounter wise and everything else, and then after a while it becomes a routine. This is completely different. This is set in a very unique world. Even the encounters are horrifying and have a story of their own, and the descriptions, the way they explain them, you can use the encounters to actually create your own homebrew, if you will, campaign out of it around the encounters and the environment and everything from which they come from, which is really cool. It's actually a very rich RPG system. It really is. And from my game point of view as a gamer and playing a lot of RPGs, I enjoy this. The thing I enjoy the most about it is, even though it's a very simplistic game, it's very simple to learn, there is no lack of depth of adventure that you can put into it. It's a game that, if you want a very simple cookie cutter cutout adventure module type of game night, you can do it with this game. If you want a very immersive story driven game with plots and twists and turns and just the unknown of how the dice are going to fall and how things are going to change, you can do it with this game system as well. Now, I will say, solo, what I have found for me personally that has worked the best, and it's something, if you decide to pick this system up, you might want to look for. And I picked up this. This is just simple. It's not what you think. It's not an adventure booklet or anything like that. It's just blank hexagonal paper. And I like to do hex crawls with mine, and it's very simple because it gives you, this is how to play the game, this is how to create the characters, here are the encounters, this is what the game master should know, here are the spells, and have at it. It's one of those RPG games. It's not an RPG game that's going to essentially hold you by the hand and take you every step of the way through it. It's leaving a lot up to you in the imagination to be able to create and bring to the table, which is very cool. For me, I find that the hex crawl works the best with this game system. And what I have done keeping it to the D6 system, is made randomized tables of terrain that I would see all the way up to 18, and then at that point figuring out encounters, weather events, environmental events, things like that, the parameters that I wanted in my game, and I was able to get them all to fit on one piece of notebook paper. And as I finished that hex, moving into the next, at that point I would roll and begin to populate that area of the hex with more terrain features and more things, and it keeps it very how do I put this, very immersive, and it feels old school to me. I guess that's the only way I can put it. It's a modern game system, but it feels old school to me, and I really do enjoy it. So, where would I rate Fantasy Age? Okay, Fantasy Age, if I was in a group setting with a game master and a couple of players playing this game, I would say I would give it like an 8 out of a 10. It's a good system. For the solo gamer, I would rate it at about, I'd say, a 7 out of a 10. And the reason why I say that is it's not a bad game. It's not a game that, if you've never had prior experience to RPGs and you're just now coming into this and you're looking for a system to start out on, Fantasy Age is not going to offer you a whole lot of help. As a matter of fact, Fantasy Age is going to teach you a lot about character creation, what your character can do, what the game master should do, and then it's going to leave off right there. So this is more or less a game system that's geared towards, and I don't want this to sound wrong, it's not, the game system and the way that it's written is designed if you were a beginner coming into a group situation. But for a solo situation, it's going to require a little bit more effort on your part. Now, if you've been playing RPGs for any amount of time and you understand RPGs and enjoy RPGs, you're going to be able to adapt to this book very quickly in this system. And I would say within 1 to 2 game sessions, you would have enough of randomized tables built to, at that point, occupy your world and keep you going for further game sessions. But that all gets back to the 2 different styles of play: group play and then the solo enthusiast. For us, it's the solo. It's the only way, baby. So I give it a 7 out of a 10. I am enjoying it. I do like it. And I think the more I play it, the more I'm going to enjoy it. It's, like I said, it's very reminiscent to me of Forbidden Lands, but there is way more complexity, and there's more to Forbidden Lands than what Fantasy Age has. Fantasy Age, in my opinion, is like the very watered down, if you will, version, if you wanted to look at that way, of Forbidden Lands. But all in all, it's a good game system, and it has a lot to offer if you are a solo enthusiast and you're willing to put forth that little bit of extra work to be able to get it up and off the ground and going. Because let's face it, a solo enthusiast, what is the hardest game session you will ever play? It's the first one. It's getting everything up off the ground and moving. And then typically when it comes time for the second session, you've already worked the majority of the bugs out and everything's starting to move smooth, and by the time you're into the third game session, everything's just running as smooth as glass. So that's that. And that, in a nutshell, my friends, is Fantasy Age. What I like about Fantasy Age. It's pretty good. So, The other game system that I have been currently, that has dominated my life and my evenings, and I enjoy, and a friend of mine, Lance Addington out there, he has suggested it, and it's something I was looking at, and I ran across it, and like I said in the beginning of the video, I wait till games are pretty well affordable and then I'll pick them up. I'm spending my hard-earned money on this, and I'm not getting promotional items or stuff like that from these big publishers to do this, so I'm doing it on my dime, which means I'm doing it on my time. So, I ran across this on Amazon and they had a flash sale on it. It was the cheapest I have ever in my life saw it and moved on it like that. And that is War of the Ring. This colossal beast of a game is dominated my life for a while. Now, I have to say, this system is intended for 2 players. But with a little bit of ingenuity, and really, it doesn't take a whole lot. You can make this system solo very quickly and play it. I played it a lot. Now, what do you get in this system? You get over 200 miniatures in this system. And you may be saying, well, that sounds cool. And for most part, it is. I mean, they're pretty decent miniatures. But the only problem is, I'll hold them up here and so you can see what I'm talking about. They're like a 25 millimeter. It's not exactly a 28 millimeter. But the thing that I found my first couple of game sessions was there's 3 color schemes to this entire game system. Blue, red, gray. Now, it didn't take long for me to figure out by the second game session that I had to paint the bases of these miniatures in order to be able to, when you get them out there on the map, to know who is Gondor, who is Rohan, because they're so close together, and then once the battle starts and everything comes together and the miniatures look so close to one another that you, at that point, get confused because everything is this big, huge congregation of blue with 1 or 2 gray and surrounded by a whole lot of red. So it helps. And even so I had went through it and I had painted the bases, which made everything much more simple to identify than it was at that point. I was able to make a couple of quick randomized charts for myself, and I was up and running. So, War of the Ring. What is War of the Ring? War of the Ring is not an RPG system. War of the Ring is a classic war game, and it's a war game. It's area of control. The basis of the game is, one side is the Shadow, which controls the forces of Sauron, Isengard, and the Easterlings and the Southerlings, and then of course the Free Peoples of Middle Earth. And then each player would take a side, whether they're on the Shadow or the Free Peoples, and then obviously fight to see who ultimately wins control of Middle Earth. When you play solo with this, like I have found I have my basic tables when the turn arises that I will roll, and it will decide which one of Sauron's armies are going to activate on that turn, and I stick with it through that turn. They move and recruit new soldiers and attack and do what they're going to do, and then I play the free people's side. But there's two aspects of this game. One is that the ring bearers, Frodo and Sam, reach Mount Doom at that point to throw the Ring of Power back into the lava pool and destroy it, winning the game. Or you win the game by military force and strategy. Military force and strategy. So if each stronghold and the map, and I'm going to use Rivendell as an example, as a stronghold, and it's allotted a number to it, and if the enemy was to take that territory over, they would at that point gain that many victory points on the marker. Same goes for the free people. If the free people were to successfully overtake a shadow area of interest, they would then receive those victory points. If the Free People's Army was to receive 4 victory points, which is, depending on how you play it, could be anywhere from 3 upwards to 4 strongholds on the board, they would win by strategy, battle strategy. If the Shadow side was to take 8, they would win. But all bets are off from there on out, and it's all the luck of the die. Now, with the dice, the die is the main core behind the system. And I'm not going to go into a full demonstration with this game. There are so many on YouTube that are like an hour plus or more, where they just explain the basics of the game. And if you would like to learn more about it, that's something you could look at. And it's not something I really want to get into here. I just want to review it and talk about what I like about it. And, man, this is an excellent game. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Lance Addington, my friend, recommended it to me. And it's been like gaming crack in my life. Ever since I've gotten this, I couldn't even see my gaming table for about a good week and a half. It just had this huge map of Middle Earth. It had miniatures everywhere. I had stuff placed everywhere, turn markers. And when I was at work, I would be thinking about that next move all day long till I got home, carried out that move, rolled the dice, the battle would happen, and it would carry on. Now, the thing about this, I'm just going to throw this out there. If you do not like a very long-winded battle scenario game, War of the Ring is not for you. War of the Ring, the last game session I played, which was over last weekend, I set that up Saturday morning, and it ran till late Sunday evening. And that's just taking normal breaks, your food breaks and stuff like that, and just your daily chores and stuff you got to do. But yeah, it took almost the entire weekend to complete that game. And what adds the unique thing about this game, on top of just moving the miniatures and the action dice, which they tell you if you can muster armies or attack a neighboring army or draw a card or play an event card, is you have these 2 decks which you draw from. One is an event card that can give you abilities, certain things that can, at that point, inhibit the other side from playing abilities or particular characters. And it also gives you advantages in combat. And there's so much that goes into it. The cool thing about it, though, is to sit down and when you play this game and as you go through it, how you feel immersed into Middle Earth. It's, for a board game, I have to admit, this is awesome. If you are a J.R. Tolkien fan, you love the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogy, or you love RPGing in Middle Earth, this is a game I guarantee you will pick up and you will find yourself immersed in. It's slow going at first. At first, it seems very overwhelming. And like a lot of war games to where you have, I'm going to use Gloomhaven as an example, that board game where you have all these different symbols that mean all these different things, which seems very overwhelming at first until you learn what them symbols are, and then the game moves pretty smoothly by identifying the symbols. This is no different. There's only a handful of symbols, but where the complexity comes in is that whole entire type of gaming where it's strategy and you're thinking several turns ahead. Now, when you play solo, the one thing, it's hard to, I can admit, to play solo, it's easier to develop a random table for AI for the shadow side and let the shadow side play out because there's just so much more shadow than there is to free people of Middle Earth. But not to say that you couldn't do that. But the thing when it comes to playing this game, and if you decide to try this game and play this game solo by yourself, is when it comes to the shadow side, you have to play the shadow side like the shadow is. The shadow is cruel and full of malice and will look for any weakness of the free peoples to exploit that at any given moment. If you play it like that, you're going to find you're going to have a very, very rich gaming experience that's going to feel very much like Middle Earth. And a very good game system. I love this game system. I absolutely love it. Lance referred it to me, and like I said, I saw that flash sale. Normally, this game is anywhere from 85 upwards to 100 or 100 or more average. And I mean, you get so much in here. It's a massive game system. I think this box weighs in close to about, I'm going to have to say anywhere from 12 to 15 pounds worth of just gaming miniatures and everything in here. It's a massive game. It's going to take up a lot of room on a table. It's one of these games you set it up, you're barely going to have enough table space to set a drink down. But that game is going to be there for hours, if not days, before you complete it. I love this game. I absolutely love it. War of the Ring. You know, this is going to be a hard one for me to really so it's a game designed for two player. To play it solo, I would say for me, and this is just me, I would rate it an 8 out of 10 for me. And the reason why I say that is I love Middle Earth. I love the whole entire fantasy genre of Middle Earth. So it's very easy for me to immerse myself into this game, into this rule set, and run away with it, if you will. Other people, and I'm speaking on this from the solo perspective, if you're not really a Lord of the Ring or Middle Earth enthusiast and you don't really enjoy it, you may find War of the Ring still interesting for the strategic end of it, because it is, after all, a war game, and there's a lot of strategy and planning that goes into it, and everything else on that end of it. But overall, I would have to say, for a solo enthusiast, War of the Ring would probably come in around a 6 out of 10. Just for the fact that it's a game that you really have to sit down, look at the rules, and make up house rule solo variants for it in order for it to run and run pretty good. But once you do, it's a game that's going to keep you occupied for hours. Really, it is. Like I said, the way that I do it, when it comes around to a whole new game turn, I roll a d6 and I look at the map and as to which area of the Shadow Army is going to activate. So it's either going to be the Isengard, or it's going to be the Sauron armies, or it's going to be the Easterlings or the Southerlings, and roll the action die. And everything they do, they move across the board, which means it can affect different areas of Middle Earth and the Free Peoples. And I have to admit, by playing it that way, there are times that I even find flaws in my own strategy, for the fact that up here in the north, where I may forget a lot about these miniatures because they're so far away and the majority of the enemies are down here in the southeasterly end of the map, that I kind of like forget about it until that dice roll, they activate, and then these enemies that I've kind of forgot about at that point are now a threat, kicking in the door of Bree. And you're just kind of like, oh man, I invested all my resources and my thoughts of this ongoing attack down here, but forgot about this up here. So it's very, very interesting. Even solo being played that way, I was very impressed of just what an amazing, fantastic game this is. This game would definitely be enjoyable with playing with somebody else. And I do know, talking to my friend Lance, he lives in Texas and I'm up here in Michigan, so it's not like we're gonna get together on the weekends and be able to sit down at the table together and play this game. There's a huge gap there. But one thing that was suggested that we talked about is, if he picked this up, he could set the pieces up on his end, because the setting up the maps are identical, and I could set it up on my end, and then we could just talk over the phone, and at that point move the pieces and play the game. So I'm looking forward to that. That would be very interesting, and to see how that's going to span out and how that's going to play. And I'm very, very eager for that one. So, all right, my friends, that's what I have to talk about. But one other thing I can say I did pick up for this game system that adds so much more into it was, I picked up the Lords of Middle Earth. And the Lords of Middle Earth add more miniatures, more character cards, and just overall more variance to the base game. It's at that point you get Lord Elrond, you get Galadriel, you get Sauron the White, Gandalf the White. You also get the Baelor, and a few other characters from the storyline of Middle Earth to add to the game. But let me set this back in here. I also picked up this one right here. Warriors of Middle Earth. Warriors of Middle Earth, which I have already integrated into this in the last game session I played. I used it. Whoa. It was really, really cool. So it adds a extra element to the game of factions. And with factions, because there's factions for the Shadow and there's factions for the Free People, and you could either be on the Free People side at that point, spawning treants or giant eagles, or on the Shadow side to where you are spawning giant spiders and Corsair ships to bring in. It just adds a whole, like, this different layer to it and more options, and heightens the game experience even more, even for a solo player. It is just such an, oh man, I can't emphasize enough what an excellent game this is. And not just because it's, the focus of Middle Earth. I mean, that does have a huge draw to me about it. But the overall game mechanic system, the process of you're trying to follow the story dialogue, which is getting the ring to Mount Doom, but then you also have the battle strategy that goes to it, and you can also win on the overall strategic value of the game and not necessarily just the ring, which is interesting. And then you add all the big hitters of that entire story system, from the ancient demon Baelors to Elrond of Rivendell to Lady Galadriel, and it just makes this immersive world of, and in Middle Earth, and it's a war game. It's like, to me, it's the best of both worlds, Middle Earth and wargaming. Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, my friends, I could sit here and ramble and keep rambling and rambling and rambling and rambling. Those are my two reviews that I decided to just give you a heads up out there. I know I've been kind of quiet. I've been, take a couple weeks off, and I've been playing around with these game systems. And like I said, I really want to deliver a review from a gamer's perspective, not a commercial perspective of, you really want this because you really want this because you want to spend your money with our company. You really want this. You want, I don't really get into that. For me, this game right here is going to bring me years of enjoyment. I think even probably after I'm retired, I'll probably still be playing this game and have it around probably long after it's out of print and still enjoying it. It's that good of a game. I have to admit, it's one of the best tactical board games I have played in a long time. And some people may disagree with me on that, or some people may agree with me. I guess it's all up to your style of gaming and what you like. So, quick recap: Fantasy Age, I gave that a 7 out of 10. And War of the Ring, I gave it a 6 out of 10. The only reason why is it's technically not meant to be played solitaire. It's actually a 2-player game. So depending on how you make your solo variants, it's going to vary from table to table, person to person, experience to experience, like an RPG, but it's not an RPG game, it's a board game. Now, those are my thoughts and not yours, and, give you some food for thought. Maybe if you're looking for some new games to add to your table, maybe the game systems you've been playing are getting kind of stagnant, or maybe just over commercialized, and you're looking for something new and refreshing. Well, I hope these reviews might help you out. So, with that being said, my friends, if you enjoyed the video, let me know. Click the like button. It lets me know you liked the content. And if you haven't subscribed, if you're new here and you just stumbled upon my channel, welcome. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, followed by the bell icon, and every time I upload a new video, you'll get a notification so you don't miss one. Alright, my friends, this is Artichokedip, signing off.